Oh, yeah. Good afternoon. Or if you're watching the recording, good morning, good evening. It's good, whatever it is. We are excited to be back with you guys. Hopefully you're feeling awake, energized, and alive and excited. Who's feeling good today? Anybody? Just me? Okay. Yeah, right? Feeling good. Life's fantastic, even when it's challenging, right, ladies? Life is good. Life is so, so good. Okay, today we're going to talk about one of the most important and infuriating things about life. We learn something, we know what to do, but man, we struggle to actually get it done. Anybody relate to that? Or is that just a Denning problem? Maybe it's just us, but I think there are others out there who know they should do something. They actually want to do it, but they really struggle with execution, especially consistent execution. Because right, any of us we can do it today, we can do it this week, but to do it consistently over time, it's a huge challenge. So actually, let's throw some of that in there. Throw some examples out in the chat. We want more engagement here on the mic. Jump on the mic. Let's get as much engagement today as possible, and just share, because we learn so much from sharing. What have you struggled with? Maybe there's something you're like, it's reoccurring. What's something you've struggled with? You know you should do it, you want to do it, but you've had a hard time being consistent in it.
I know a story you should share.
Oh,
I don't have anything to
I
share.
love when you know all these things that I should share.
I know what you should be doing. No, I think you should share the story about podcasting.
Oh, this one's painful. Thank you, Rachel, for bringing up such a painful
I'll get
subject.
some lemon juice
to squeeze on my wounds. So I started podcasting in maybe 2008, and it was tough back then. Even in 2000, again, I kind of picked it up and was going. It was so much.
2008 and then
2010.
Oh, 10.
Yeah, so 2008 and 2010, it was a lot.
It
was so much more work. We knew it was a thing. We knew it was starting out, but man, now it's so unbelievably easy compared to back then. And so you had to submit this approval process, this huge thing with Apple. It literally took, I think it took 2 months to even get approved to be able to do a podcast.
And then the recording process.
Was so challenging.
You had to have all this equipment. Now
and
you
then
literally
go through this process.
Wait, I'm talking, interrupting your story.
Now you're telling my story.
Now we can literally record our podcast on my phone anywhere in the world. All we need, use a microphone, of course. But that's all we need. A microphone and an iPhone to do a podcast.
So you hit record and then you hit publish, and it publishes automatically to all these outlets. Like, it's so simple, but here's what she wanted me to bring up. Had I just continued.
Well, wait, let's add this part. You wrote in his journal, I need to be podcasting. I need to do a podcast. I must do this.
In this journal.
In 2008
or 9,
10.
Yeah. Like, I knew that this was the key to our success. I knew I needed to do it, but we didn't. It was challenging. We were traveling. I made excuses, and I stopped. And let me transfer this deep remorse and pain so you guys can get a sense for this. When I think about how many, if I had done one a week,
one a month.
If I'd done one a month, we think how many episodes I'd have if I'd done one a week for the last 14 years. And the size of the platform we'd now have, the reputation, the impact, the influence, the reach. Unbelievable. And I was interviewing some awesome people, like movers and shakers, people that had accomplished incredible things. And I was just like, bleh,
it's so hard.
I stopped. And I still regret that so much.
Then when did we actually start our podcast? 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I hit it, and then I was doing one a week at least, sometimes 2 a week. And now the impact that has, it's going, and it's working so well. And I thought, man, if I'd kept that up, it would have made such a difference. So there's one of my deep regrets as a reminder for all of us. Like there's things we know we do. And today we're going to talk about how to get it done and give you like a simple formula. And this just works to help you do the things you know you need to do. So let's hit some comments.
Okay. I feel like there are many times when I've gained knowledge and a desire to do something, but changing habits and behaviors is the more challenging part. Losing weight, making healthy food for the family, running our business effectively, etc.
Ooh,
Yeah.
3 really good ones. We'll come back to those.
Losing weight. I'm about 20 pounds over my healthy fighting weight. I need to lose the weight to help with major back pain, and because I'm a strength coach, I want to follow through with what I teach.
Boom. Okay, there's another level where not only do you know it, but you actually teach it. And so we got to be modeling that. Well, that's true for all of us, isn't it? We're modeling, at a minimum, we're modeling for our family and for our kids.
Morning routine. I have a good plan, but by the time I drop into bed way late from dealing with all the crises from the day before, it just doesn't happen. And
Good.
then, oh yes, definitely waking up early in the morning, even despite the great advice from the Dennings about morning routines.
Yeah. Okay, so really great examples. So health and fitness around eating and exercise, morning and evening routines, effectiveness in business and running the family. And I think that hits them, and there's a few more. So you guys all get this. This is awesome. And again, if and those of you watching the recording, I think we can all relate to this. This is something we hear from people all over this planet. Like, it's not a lack of knowing what to do, it's how to actually get it done.
Right.
So, like, I'm going to break this down. It is, when I learned this, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, it is so simple and yet so profound. Like, this is the game changer. You ready for this? Are you excited?
Whoa. I'm excited.
Can you feel the anticipation? At least crack a smile. Like, show me something. You have a pulse here, people. That's awesome.
They're like, just get to the point
They're like,
already.
just tell me already. You ready? Here it is. Roll with me on it for a second. In life, there's like this eternal law. In life, we get what we tolerate. And every day, whether we're conscious of it or not, and very often it's subconscious or unconscious, we are all living by our personal standards. So if you're taking notes, write that down. The reason we don't do the things we know we should is because we have not yet established that as a non-negotiable standard. Can you feel the chills from that one?
Or the other side of that is that we are still tolerating the life we have. We're tolerating
the results we have.
We're tolerating the results we currently have.
So if you tolerate the results and you don't make it a non-negotiable standard, then you let it slide. So let's put this into perspective. Each of you think of something that is absolutely, no exceptions, non-negotiable in your life. It can be anything. What's something you literally would never, ever tolerate? Throw that in the chat box or jump on the mic.
Well, I want to start with,
hearing your voices.
Can I use your example that you just shared with me?
Sure. Which one? One? Yeah.
Okay. Because this would be a non-negotiable for me. Well, for one thing, let's start with this. We live in Georgia and there's cockroaches, and I hate cockroaches. And our family sometimes calls them chatroaches because our son used to call them that when we lived in the Dominican Republic years ago. So I'm not kidding you. One cockroach and I kill it. I don't just like, oh, that's okay. Just let it be.
We live in the South.
We live in the South. No big deal. I'm even worse than that. I don't even allow flies in my house. I kill every single fly in the house. I hate bugs. But Greg went to go speak at this event for this organization called Life and Air, and one of the presenters there put up a picture
Of
of a
a
cupboard
kitchen cupboard
filled with
roaches.
cockroaches.
It was
Filled.
disgusting.
Now, that is something I would not tolerate. Everything else would be put on the line to eliminate and eradicate all of the cockroaches. That's an example of not tolerating something. I am not going to put up with a whole bunch of cockroaches, not even one cockroach in my house, right? I just don't tolerate that. But that example is perfect, that I will not tolerate a cupboard full of cockroaches in my house. No questions asked.
And here's the deeper level to that. How do cockroaches make you feel? So the thought of a bunch of cockroaches in your kitchen, how does that make you feel? And I'm serious, like either turn on the mic or write in the chat. If you open your cupboard and there was a nest of roaches, how does that make you feel? This is where the magic is in this whole principle. Okay,
Disgust.
makes you feel dirty, makes you feel gross, makes you feel disgust. Right? Picture this, visualize it, maybe even feel it. You run up for, you're gonna get a glass or a snack. You open it up and it's like, oh, right, so bad. Yeah, so gross. It's true that everything else in life would go on hold while you took care of that.
Exactly. It's true.
That's the point.
That is the principle right there. The reason you're not doing what you know you shouldn't do, or not doing what you know you should do, is because you're tolerating what you're already doing. But if you get to the point where you will not tolerate it, everything else in life goes on hold until you fix that problem. Just like the cockroaches would in the cabinet. That's exactly what we're talking about. Because when we finally started podcasting, when we finally started taking our business seriously, when we finally started taking our health seriously, when we finally started taking whatever was important seriously, that was the kind of approach and response that we had. We're done. This is enough. No more. No longer. No, you're not eating that. No, I'm not buying that.
Get that crap out of my house.
Exactly.
When a kid walks in the door with Oreos, you're like, this is going
No,
in the
I have
garbage.
literally thrown candy down the toilet and in the garbage because I do not tolerate it. That's how serious I am about it. And my kids know it. And he's even worse.
Or better, as the
Or
case
better,
may be.
exactly.
But we're intense about it. So one of the principles here, and I want you to do this mentally, you get to something and you think that is so, when you have that level of grossness, quote, for that thing, watch how it changes everything. Katie, you had your hand up. Go for it.
I'm just, connecting some dots here. So what you're saying is, like, to us, when you talk about those cockroaches, it's like, I cannot live because of that thing. Kind of like if you had a flat tire, like you can't drive your car, you just can't. And so what you're saying is that's how we should feel about these things, which is, no, they really do mean a lot.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes,
Exactly.
thank you. You can't just keep going like that. Although I saw that the other day. This person had a massively flat tire and they just kept driving. And I'm like, I told Kimball, I was with Kimball, I was like, what happens is when you drive on a flat tire, it just destroys your sidewall. And what was a flat tire that could be repaired moves it beyond repair. And they just kept driving and they kept going. And I'm like, watch this. We were just going along. I'm like, watch it. And it just shredded the tire and then bent the rim. And they just kept driving. And so some of us are like that. We're going along and we just tolerate it. Now, you can't do this with everything, or you couldn't function.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to work things in pace, but you pick the most important things. And at that point, like what becomes non-negotiable? I do this with all my clients. What becomes non-negotiable? And when they establish that thing, it's incredible what they get done. So let me actually give you an example. So last week, they flew me out to Las Vegas to speak again for an organization. And I met this guy and he's like, oh, look, I want to coach with you. I want to change my whole life. And he had been, he and his wife had been grossly obese for all of their marriage and most of their adult life. And it's generational, right? It came from their parents and his grandparents, and it is a problem. And I was like, well, you have it because you're tolerating it. And he's like, I'm done. I'm like, are you seriously done? Are you really sincerely done? He's like, I'm done. I'm like, are you going to do exactly what I tell you? Because there's no messing around here. You can keep doing what you're doing, and you'll keep getting what you've got. And he says, I'm done. Oh, actually, let me pause here in this narrative. The way to do this is ask yourself, what happens down the road if I don't make this change? Walk down that road of allowing the cockroaches, of driving on the flat tire, of being unhealthy. Go down that road. Where does it lead? And let that be the grossness that causes so much conflict that you're like, it stops now.
Well, I think a key part of this is not just thinking through, but actually feeling the pain. Like Greg was talking about, when we're like, imagine those cockroaches, like, how does that make you feel? It's that type of experience. Think in your head, if I continue on this path, where is it going to end up? And how painful is that? How gross is that? How disturbing is that? And feel that pain. We have done that so many times, where we imagine and we say to ourselves, if we keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. And we get so disturbed by it that we put a stop to it. We, like he says, this stops now.
Especially
the tire's flat, we're pulling over and we're fixing it now.
Oh yeah, Tasha, please.
Okay, so I was just thinking of this. So we've always tried to eat healthy, but it was hit and miss. And then in 2011, I had cancer, and that I really didn't want to do chemo. So that was my motivation. Like, I did everything, completely changed my diet, and it was a neat experience. My oncologist was supportive, and so I was able to heal it naturally. But during that time, I mean, I didn't eat anything. I think there were a couple of times I ate a couple of corn chips or something. But other than that, like, everything was focused on that, and it just gave me that motivation. It's been harder going off of that and then like trying to transition to a less extreme diet. But it taught me a lot, because suddenly I had no excuses for eating something I shouldn't. It was, that was the focus. So.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Tasha, thank you. That's the perfect example, because at that point you're like, what's my alternative here?
Yeah.
It's kind of the life is on the line principle. Your life is on the line, you're going to stop it. Man, it's so profound, so powerful. One of the things that brings real emotional power to me and to Rachel is seeing this in our children. If we have a bad habit that we keep tolerating ourselves, it's easy to see that your kids will pick it up and keep going with it, and maybe even pass it on to their kids. It's not hard to picture your grandkids with exacerbated bad habits that they learned from you. If that won't stop you, man, I don't know what will. That is so powerful. Let me go back to this gentleman I spoke with. And he said, yep, I'm in. I'll do it. And I said, okay, first thing you need to do is to do a 3-day fast. And he's like, a what? I'm like, yeah, 3 days, only water. Well, can I do like smoothies? And I'm like, no, 3 days, water. I promise you'll lose 10 pounds. He's like, oh man, three days. Whoa, like I have a hard time doing one, fasting for 2 meals. I'm like, let's go, bro. And so he did it. Immediately, he started. He's like, fine, I'm done right now. Right? He messaged me this morning, down 10 pounds and feeling fantastic. Right? I was like, yeah, brother. And what's really cool, he has about 30 pounds to lose, and he just knocked off a third of it in less than a week. And he's like, I'm done. And we're working with him, like he's on intermittent fasting now, exercise routines, we're cleaning up the quality of his food. He's going to be the tide that comes in and lifts all the family boats, so to speak. and sets that legacy and breaks the previous legacy where literally everyone in his family is overweight. He's ending that now for his little girls, right? Who are really little, but also already overweight, right? So it has to stop. So when it becomes that palpable, and you guys, this is the experience that Scrooge had in A Christmas Carol. You guys have read or watched Christmas Carol? That was the point. They took him through this experience that night and saw so much pain in his future that he was willing to make the change. Basically, the way we're saying it, he was willing to raise his standards. So
another thing I want to bring up with this, a phrase that Greg and I often use or refer to is this idea. I don't even know where we got this, but maybe you'll remember. It says to know and not to do is really not to know.
Stephen Covey.
Good. And what that means is essentially another way of saying what we're talking about. That if you know you should do something, but you don't actually do it, you really don't know it. Now, the challenge we have is that in English, we use the same word know, right? We're using know. I know, you know. And as I was thinking about it, I thought about in Spanish, there's actually 2 different words that we would use for know. One of them is conocer, which means to be familiar with someone. Like if you know someone, it's conocer.
Yep. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I was like, wow, you're practically Latina.
Then the other word for know is saber, which means to know something, like to have wisdom is sabiduría. Sabiduría. So in a way, it's that sort of difference. You might know something, you're familiar with it, but you don't really know it. It's not wisdom that you possess, right? Because if you did, you would behave in a different way. If we tie that in with this idea of tolerating things, once you really know something, when you really know you should not be doing something, that's when you start throwing things in the garbage and dumping stuff down the toilet and no longer buying that thing or no longer, whatever the thing is, you stop doing it and you start behaving differently because you know in your soul, kind of like with Tasha's experience with cancer, because that for our own health, that's where our journey started with my dad having cancer, and he actually passed away from colon cancer. But that started me in knowing that I needed to take better care of my health, like in my soul, knowing that. And that altered my behavior. I no longer tolerated unhealthy eating and an unhealthy lifestyle.
Man, and you get at that point, you guys, you get conviction about what you'll tolerate and what you will not tolerate. And so, of course, we all have these experiences. In fact, I'm sure if we open up, you could all share an experience that cemented something for you and you said, okay, no more, or from here on out, like this is the thing. And, like the car accident we had, we were living in Alaska. We almost lost our daughter. She got ejected from the car when she's 3 years old, broke her femur. Right? That's conviction. It changes the way you see life and see your family. Or I just got back. I don't know if you guys know this. I had the opportunity to go to Cuba last week to help with hurricane recovery, and to go down to this country that's just been devastated with the eye of a horrible hurricane, and also see communism in real time. It changes you. I've been to almost 50 countries. We've been in colonies of the leprosy affected, in the shanty towns in Casablanca. We were in India and in Casablanca, and then in the little Mayan villages in Guatemala, and the Inca villages in Peru. I mean, we've been to crazy places, but nothing like Cuba. And one thing I took away from there, there's 2 main lessons. It's in Cuba, it's not that there's a shortage in the stores, it's that there are no stores. Imagine a life where there are no stores. You can't go shopping and get what you want. You receive
Or need.
You receive what, between us, honestly, a very inept government provides for you and still charges you. They sell it to you, but they only offer you to buy the very tiny amount that they have. There's no hardware stores. You can't fix up your house. There's no grocery stores. You can buy what you want. You can't choose to eat healthy there. You can't choose to have diet preferences there.
Sometimes you don't even choose to eat.
Yeah, they don't even get food. That was the one thing. So, man, you don't take anything for granted anymore. I knew that before, but not like this. The second thing was, I really want to know. I'm like, you guys know me. I'm just so curious. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand. So I was asking everybody everything and meeting everybody. I really want to understand their lives. I was like, what's the highest paid salary here? And they have great education. They're very educated people, very resilient people. They're intuitive and creative and innovative. They're awesome people. Amazing. I have nothing but respect for the Cuban people. I said, and so they get great education. The education's free. I'm like, what's the highest paid salary? He's like, I think it's a doctor. I said, how much does a doctor make in Cuba? He says, $60 a month. The highest paid salary in Cuba is a physician who went to school for 8 or 12 years, makes $60 a month. And I was flabbergasted. I just couldn't, being an entrepreneur, and I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like, well, how do you make more money? He's like, you don't. Because if you figure out some way to make more money, the government has a program each year. They come around and they take away money from anyone who seems to be getting richer. They literally just pull you back down. He's like, people don't progress. So I came home with this deep conviction that you and I, and our children, we must. We have a moral obligation to succeed and rise simply because we can. Right? And I thought while I was down there, I was like, these people who are so innovative and so resourceful, what would they do with our opportunities? Blows my mind. I think, how are we squandering those opportunities because we tolerate it? Right? Wow. Read that.
Mm-hmm. I think a key here is education. In order to know something, you have to grow your mind. My level of what I know has grown a lot over the last 10 years, especially when it comes down to nutrition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And this is a key piece. And this is actually where I wanted to go next. I wanted to talk about this because when we know something, right? So we've talked about these examples of knowing something in our soul, having some sort of experience that was transformative, some sort of experience that changed us, that changed our behavior, that changed our thinking. What we're trying to tell you is you can create those experiences. You don't have to wait for them to happen. You don't have to wait for someone to get cancer, or for someone to die, or for something bad to happen, or whatever. You can intentionally create those types of experiences in your life to have those transformations. And that's what we've started to do, is when we gain this conviction, because it's kind of this process of, you come across the information and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, and it attracts your attention. And then you're like, yeah, that's really good. We should do that. And it progresses, but at some point, unless you're intentional, it will usually stop. And the conviction will go away. The knowing will go away, unless you create some sort of transformative experience that solidifies that in your soul, so that you actually change your behavior and make it a reality.
And that the experience is directly tied to emotion.
Yes.
Many of us go through the motions without emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Jot that down. That is worth thinking about. Don't just go through the motions without emotion. Because when somebody says, hey, you have cancer, wow, man, now you got the emotion. When somebody says, you just had a heart attack, because you're eating so poorly, not exercising. Man, now you got conviction, baby. You got religion. That working out and eating right, that's your new religion. You are not messing around. When somebody says, look, if you don't stop this, your children will XYZ.
Worst case scenario.
Whoa. Now you know. And so it's created the feeling. And what Rachel's saying is like, don't wait until they tell you you're dying to change. Don't wait until 20 years from now they say, man, you
should have
blew
started
it.
a podcast.
You should have done a podcast. Or you blew it as a parent. Your kid just bombed, totally failed to launch as an adult because you didn't follow through with what you knew you needed to do when they were young.
Now, back to this idea of going through the motions without emotion, I would say that sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, we are actually avoiding the emotion. We don't think about that thing because it makes us feel uncomfortable, or it makes us feel guilty, or it makes us feel bad, or it makes us feel sad. We don't go there. But because we don't go there, we actually limit our ability and opportunity to make transformative change. So it's actually the opposite. And we've developed this. If we start thinking about something, or something comes up that's painful or scary or frightening or terrifying or horrible, potentially, we actually go there mentally, and we'll talk about it.
Lean into
We'll
it.
think about it. We'll discuss it. We'll feel it, all the pain, all the anguish, all the terror. And then we use it as a tool to change our behavior. Where unfortunately, too many people don't want to go there and think about it. And so they avoid those feelings and try to feel good instead by doing the very things that are sabotaging them. Eating, drinking sometimes, Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, scrolling on Instagram. We're buffering and we're avoiding those uncomfortable feelings because we don't like to go there. But that is the thing that's keeping us where we're at.
Okay. Now we got two really awesome questions.
Yes.
So one was, well, how do you know what you don't know, which is awesome. And then another question here is, she said, this is the hard part. I feel so motivated after we do these meetings, and then everything falls apart and it's back to survival mode. So both of those questions and thoughts, really great. And thanks for articulating that, because it helps us understand what's going on. When it becomes a non-negotiable standard, it does away with it's way beyond motivation. Motivation will only get us so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you feel motivated to do something, you can do it for a little bit, but then when the motivation kind of wears down, because it's exhaustible. Motivation is exhaustible and renewable, but you're motivated and then the motivation wears off, or something gets distracting, you stop. But when it's a non-negotiable standard, it doesn't matter what else happens. So let's go back to the cockroaches. If there were legitimately cockroach nests in your kitchen right now, and after this call, you're like, man, I'm so motivated, I'm going to get rid of the cockroaches. But as soon as you go downstairs, like one kid needs this, the other kid needs that, I don't think everything's going crazy, you're putting out fires, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to let the cockroaches stay.
And multiply.
And just, in fact, I'm going to build them a little house and a little nest, and I'm going to
You don't
feed
even
them.
have to do
I'm going to
that.
put
You
some
just
crackers in the
ignore it.
cupboard, right? Are you going to ignore it? And again, that's why the cockroaches work so well, because they're so detestable. Unless some of you are like, oh, I don't mind cockroaches. Then you got to pick something else, whatever it is. Like, what is so disgusting to you, you would not tolerate it no matter what.
Well, and there's two types of forces at work here. You could call it like a pushing and a pulling, or a, I don't know, carrot and a stick, or positive and negative, maybe. So the one side is the motivation. That's more of a positive emotion. That's like, yeah, I feel excited and motivated and inspired. That's a good thing, but it's not enough by itself. You have to have the pushing motivation that says this will end. I will not tolerate this. That's the disgust. And that's literally the emotion that it is. I think it's truly tapping into disgust. I am disgusted with myself that I allow this to occur. Just like I would be disgusted with myself if the cockroaches were taking over. So you have to learn to use both of those to your benefit. The motivation is fantastic, but all by itself, it's not enough. It won't move you. It won't drive you. It won't change your behavior.
Until you change your personal standard.
Yes.
So can we do some coaching here? And if one or more.
Well, do you want to do the how to know what you don't know?
Well, so how do you, again, you set a standard, right? So you're like, well, I want to give me something. That's where I was going to go.
Yeah, I think I need some.
Let's get some context.
Because
where have you been tolerating low standards in your life? Everyone just think of a couple things. We can share a couple. You don't have to, but think of something. Where have you been tolerating a low standard? What's something in your life that you realize, what's an area of your life you're like, yeah, you know what? I haven't raised my standard there. I've wanted to, I've thought about it, I've talked about it, but I haven't really done anything about it. It was awesome this morning in the mentor accountability program with the youth. One of them was like, yeah, I set this goal like 6 weeks ago to start working out and get in great shape. And I thought about it a ton. And I thought about it for about a month. And I stopped him right there. I'm like, how much better shape did you get in over that month of thinking about fitness? And he was like, none. I was like, yeah, right. Thinking about it, even talking about it won't help you get bigger muscles. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in the action. So where's that area where you've been tolerating? Let's get some specific concrete examples here, because then we can dive into getting what, knowing what you don't know, raising the standard, getting to a different level. Tasha says one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Going to bed late and waking up early.
Now, okay, so that's one that you've been tolerating. How important is it to you in your...
Sorry, I'm confused. So you are going to bed late and waking up early, or you are going to bed late and not waking up early?
No, we go to bed late and wake up late.
Okay.
Later than we want. It's still kind of early, but I mean, there's all the excuses. Teenagers, my husband ends up working late, things like that. But it's having a bad effect on our family. So it's definitely something that needs to change.
Okay, so keep going with that. Talk through that. Why is this important? Like, explain to me why this matters so much. Because it might be, you're going to look at some of these things like, it's not a big deal, and that's why it happens. But if you can convince me this is a big deal, then we can start working.
Yeah, well, definitely from listening to all of you guys' materials, I realized that was one big missing piece, that I need to be up before my kids. And they've been kind of had a dream about it, like, that let me know, like, this is something you really need to be working on. And then, we just, and I'm sure it's just that we haven't set up the right habits for being able to get to bed earlier. And it's not a huge motivation for everyone else in my family yet. So I need to convince them and get us all on board with that. We all know it would be better and that we need more sleep and all that, but it just hasn't become a habit, I guess.
Okay, good. This is so good.
So I have a comment. I'm going to mute you for just a second. So one of the things I thought of when you were talking that I could see as a potential roadblock is that you feel that you need to get everyone else on board in the family in order for you to go to bed earlier and get up earlier. And the reality is, if you wait for that, it's likely never going to happen. Now, part of that is you're like, well, I'm the mom. I have to be up when everyone's awake. And we don't operate like that. Our kids, except for the youngest ones, because we're in more control of that, they can stay up. We are going to bed. We go to bed when we need to go to bed so we can get up when we need to get up. And one, that helps us to actually optimize our lives, right? so we can be ready for the day. We can have energy. All these things, all these positive benefits. It helps us to do that. 2, we're modeling it for them, so that then they can choose to stay up however late they want and get up when they want, but they get to see us living out this ideal we're trying to teach them. And that actually convinces them more than us trying to talk about they should go to bed earlier and get up earlier.
So we teach them, but then we show by example.
Right. But we don't wait for them to do it in order for us to do it. So we literally, we never wait up for our kids. Our teenagers, first of all, they're very responsible and very trustworthy.
Because we've trained them that way.
Because we've trained them. So we do not worry about them being up longer than we do, even if they're out. We go to bed when we need to go to bed so that we can get the sleep we need and be able to get up at an earlier time. So that's one thing that came to my mind is this. And we do that with a lot of stuff that's not unique. We kind of think we build it up into this big thing of, well, in order to do that, I have to do all of these other things first and convince all these other people. And it's huge. And then we're like, how am I ever going to do that? When really, you could start tomorrow, even no matter what time you go to bed tonight, you could get up 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. And guess what? You've already started getting up earlier. And then you move that up, you keep bumping it. And then because you're getting up earlier, you're actually tireder at night. So you go to bed earlier. That's one way I fix it too. I'm not someone who uses an alarm. I don't like alarms. But if I'm thrown off, I will use an alarm to get up early in the morning because then I'm extra tired and I go to bed earlier that night. So that's one way I do it. Because I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get up because I'll be tired tonight. And then I've switched and I can start going to bed earlier. So I start with me. And you can start by making the small changes. Now, of course, Greg doesn't always do small changes. That's okay. It's making the small switches and getting up 15 minutes earlier. And then, that moves to a half hour earlier. And then that's like 45 minutes earlier. And then gradually you're now getting up earlier. Okay, but you just said good advice. What if your teens want to talk with you after your little ones go to bed? Yeah, I get that.
That happens. We love that.
We love that.
Rachel and I were literally in bed, all bundled up, and the teens were just
talking till 11:30.
It was
and
awesome.
It was pretty. We loved it.
If that was chronic, we're gonna have dinner earlier, littles in bed earlier, engaging with teens earlier. We're gonna move it up because it matters. When you have that leverage, it matters.
So a couple of approaches. One of them is that if it's consistently happening every single night, I'm going to start making that shift, kind of like getting up earlier. I'm going to start making that shift so that starts to happen earlier. So it still is happening, but now it's a little bit earlier.
This may sound unbelievable, but teens do talk earlier in the evening. They just need to be enticed.
Well, or it's basically the same. You're having the same routine, but you're
scooting it up
a little. And it happens little by little. They don't even notice. The other thing is, I found, at least for us, that just doesn't generally happen every single night. It's, a couple times a week, 3 times a week. That's doable for me. I can stay up later a few times a week and still usually be able to get up at my normal time and then recover from that the next night. So even when we're talking about getting up, going to bed earlier, waking up earlier, that's not 100% of the time. Whenever we talk about something, I'm generally 80-20, maybe you're 90-10 or 99-10. I don't know what you're at, but it's a percentage. It's most of the time. That's what you're doing. But that still allows for flexibility with doing some of these other things, these natural parts of family life that are fun and enjoyable and part of life. So that's fun.
Okay, let me throw down something here that hopefully is a game changer for all of you. And what's interesting, working with thousands of people I work with youth every day, actually. I meet with youth every single day. I was just with a whole bunch of college age students, and I work with adults every day. This is across the board, youth, young adults, and adults, that all of our society is staying up late. I recently had a sleep expert on my podcast, and he said, if you smoke cigarettes your whole life, they found you cut off 3 to 5 years of life. If you smoke cigarettes, you literally cut off 3 to 5 years at the end of your life. Then he said, if you sleep poorly, if you're going to bed late, getting up late, you don't have good sleep, you cut off anywhere from 5 to 15 years of life.
I was so shocked when I
Yeah.
heard that. I
I
was
was like, oh, boom. I'm like, you are better off smoking every day than poor sleep. Let that sink in. If that doesn't give you conviction and religion, I don't know what will. I want to live to be like 120. And here's what I do mentally. I want to be dancing with vigor at my great grandkids' weddings. I don't want to be dead and missing it. I don't want to be in a wheelchair, barely hanging on, slobbering all over myself. I want to be there. So guess what? I get my butt to bed for my kids, for my grandkids, for my great grandkids, for my own well-being. And when you get serious about it, when you make it a standard, you just say, you walk through like lights out, noise off, nothing. The Wi-Fi goes down because it's spreading cancer the whole night. Turn the Wi-Fi off, take the TV controllers, whatever you got to do, take them in your room, lock it and say, if I hear a peep from anyone, if I see a light come under my door, there will be hell to pay, kids. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, okay. That is the other side of it that we didn't explain. That they're allowed to stay up, but they better not interrupt us because we're going to bed and we're getting our sleep. They can do whatever they want as long as it doesn't disturb us, right? So that's the other part of the equation.
And our rule is the only way you can stay up is if you're reading or working on a project. You're not just up entertaining yourself or on social media or whatever,
Yeah.
phones, or this is dumb. We just have some standing rules. But you see what I'm saying? There's a standard right there. You're like, wait a minute. If I don't sleep well, that's 5 to 15 years of life I lose. Is that not enough to motivate you? It's beyond motivation. Is that enough to make you so disgusted that you get to bed? It is for me. It is for me. And so that's a perfect example. And that answers Katie's question. How do you know what you don't know? Man, talking to that expert, now I know. And we talked through the whole cascade of negative consequences from behavioral stuff to like messed up menstrual cycles to anxiety, depression, all these disorders to mouth problems, gut problems, weight loss problems, all related to sleep. So how do you know what you don't know? Man, you start studying this stuff and you realize, look, this is the stack of negative things that comes with poor sleep. I'm getting to bed and I'm sleeping really well. I'm getting my kids to bed and helping them sleep really well because this matters way more than we think. Is that hitting home? God, I'm ranting there on like, oh,
It's so great.
it's so powerful and so exciting.
Now I do want to kind of throw this in here because I feel like sometimes we're trying to live up to someone else's standards. And what I mean by that is, what does early mean anyways? Going to bed early or getting up earlier? Getting up early. And the truth is that's really very independent. And I've told this story before, I'm sure, but I like to share it, that I used to try to live on Greg Denning's schedule. But then I read a book that changed my life. Like, how do you know what you don't know, right? You keep reading. And I realized I am not Greg Denning, meaning I don't have the same chrono rhythm as him. He's in this book I read, you're like a lion, obviously, you're a lion. And I'm what they call a dolphin, which means I go to bed later and I get up, well, same time, but my brain can't sleep as well if I go to bed earlier. And that was something I struggled with for a while. Now, of course, I had kids and I wasn't sleeping anyways because you have kids and you're getting up with them. But when my kids finally started sleeping through the night, I was suffering from essentially what was insomnia. I would try to go to bed at like 9, which is when you like to go to bed. And I couldn't sleep for like 2.5 hours. Well, turns out that's because my chrono rhythm is different. And so I'm supposed to go to bed at 11:30. That's early. That's my bedtime. And once I started doing that, now I sleep great. I sleep great and I get up refreshed. So part of all of this is like, don't try to box yourself into someone else's rules or standards or what works for them. Another thing I've learned that's very fascinating, having lived in lots of different places around the globe, we've lived in Alaska, we've lived in Germany, we lived in Costa Rica, we live in Georgia right now. Everywhere in the world, obviously, daylight hours are different. And something I've discovered for our entire family across the board, that when there's more sun, we sleep less. And when there's less sun, we sleep more. And that's fine. That's normal. In Germany, when we moved there, we'd been living in Costa Rica, and it's the same year round. It doesn't change. It's dark at 6:30 p.m. and it's light at 5 a.m. Guess what time we went to bed at our entire family? We all went to sleep. We were in bed asleep by like 8:30 or 9.
That was awesome.
And we all woke up at 5. But then we moved from Costa Rica to Germany. Guess what time we went to bed? Midnight, because it was light until 11:30. Guess what time we got up? Like 9 or 10. And that was fine. We were moving with the sun. So that's another thing to take into consideration. Like, where are you living in the world? What time does it get dark? What time does it get light? And as the seasons change, we sleep more in the winter because it's darker longer. All of that is normal. So early is relative. That's another thing to keep into consideration. And it also depends on what type of chronorhythm you have. And if you want to know about that, then you should read the book, The Power of When. I don't know who it's by.
Okay. So Katie asked some questions.
Yeah.
They're so good. I could have paid her to ask these. Nicely done, Katie. She says, what do you do, or how do you do this when you're with extended family? And then followed up with, also, how do you do this without having resentment from kids?
Oh, well, and she followed up with, especially the nutrition.
Oh, and the nutrition part. So, and thank you. You keyed that up just perfectly. I'll send you some Venmo later. It's just kidding. You're like, yeah, I'll take Venmo. So the problem with most people,
That's such a generalized thing.
I know, and I'm generalizing on purpose, and I'm bold enough to say most people, is that we live by our problems, not by our principles. We follow expediency instead of a standard. So I'll have clients be like, oh man, I didn't eat very well last week. I'm like, what happened? I stopped for fast food. What were you thinking? Why would you stop for fast food? And their answer was, we were out and I was hungry. And my response is, who gives a crap if you're hungry? Right? Because I'm kind of hardcore. Like, I'm like, are you going to live by your principles and standards, or are you going to live by expediency? You say, I don't eat fast food unless I'm hungry. What the heck's that? Or I eat well unless there's extended family around. Or I go to bed unless my kids don't want to. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to bust anybody's chops here. I'm saying
But you are.
but I kind of am, with lots and lots of love. Lots of love and a little bit of frank speech here, a little bit of straight talk. When the standard is non-negotiable, it literally doesn't matter what anyone else does or where you are. If I'm going to bed and all extended family like, stay up and talk, like, nope, love ya, good night. Oh, come on, party pooper, buenas noches. They're like, you're such a stick in the mud. Gosh, you're so extreme. Why don't you lighten up? And I'll be like, look at your mediocre lives, people.
You don't
I
say that.
I don't say that. I don't want to live like that. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. But you say, look, I love you. Bonne nuit. See you in the morning. Get up early and work out with me. Boom. And they kind of like, rah, 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 rah. But then they see the results, that you're in way better shape than all of them. You earn 2 or 3 times or 5 times more money than the rest of them. You have incredible relationships. It's awesome. And they're like, maybe I should start listening. Right? You're leading out.
Now, that being said, here I come with my,
All right.
my
Rachel has to bring
temperance.
in the temperance. I'll throw it down. You guys can take wherever you want.
Again, I'm an 80-20. He's the 99-1 or 90-10. I think sometimes you're 90. So I allow for that. If I'm with my family, my extended family, I go visit my siblings, whatever. I stay up late and I talk and we
And
chat and we do
eats
all that
junk
stuff. And
food and
I will eat
garbage
junk
and
food.
crap.
Now my junk food is, I still have standards for what I allow for junk food, right? My mom made homemade ice cream one time at my, I don't know what event it was. It was something. And it was a recipe from my grandpa. I ate it happily. It was this lemon sherbet that my grandpa used to make filled with sugar. And I ate it.
It had enough sugar to literally cause brain damage. But it was sentimental.
But it was
because
sentimental.
her
And
grandpa
it was
used
good.
it, who actually died early. So
Of smoking, not ice cream.
smoking and sugar.
So I go about 80-20, but where my rule is I don't allow it to become chronic, especially if it's over an extended period of time. For me, 2 or 3 days is my limit. So if I go and I'm with family and whatnot, okay, I'll stay up for 2 nights, but then I'm going to bed early, right? Same with the food. I'll indulge, but then I'm done because honestly, I don't feel as good. So it starts to become that it's that balance for me that I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't have a problem with being a part of the same with staying up with the kids and stuff. I'll stay up with the kids and we'll watch some show or whatever, but that's not going to happen every night because that's just too much. That's where the boundary is crossed for me. That's the standard. I hope that makes sense there.
Yes, we do.
It looks like you disagree with us.
We
Yeah.
do. We disagree on a lot of things. And I
Yeah,
think that's
we do.
important for you guys to
Absolutely.
see that we still have like this coordinated effort to get results. And even in these things, the results don't lie.
Greg is way buffer than I am.
Way
Stronger.
fitter.
Fitter.
Rachel
Fitter?
is.
Is that a word?
Fitter. As far as the kids and resentment, it's worth noting here. Nobody, well, very, very few people, including children, are resentful when they understand the relevance. And even with kids, if they realize it's relevant, there's no resentment. Ooh, I like that. Relevance removes resentment. See that? 3 R's, baby. I'm
Good.
writing that down.
That's good.
Relevance removes resentment. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, I just like you guys kind of know this about me. I'm like an all or nothing type of person. And for Rachel, it's almost like my brain can't comprehend this because if like you really are convicted, you're like, I don't eat this. But a little bit if it's the lemon sherbet, and so I think that maybe where I struggle with this is, yeah, I'm like an all or nothing. So I'm like, well, I'm eating the lemon sherbet. So, and then I forget about why I'm doing it in the first place.
I had to smack you.
I know. Thank you for bringing that up. This is really
this
important.
is good. And I think it takes practice because I've definitely used to
or
be.
Maybe it's just a different philosophy.
Well, hold on though. Because while Greg is certainly more extreme, that's why I leave in there that 1 to 10%, because you're not an all or nothing. He still just have his, I don't know if I should call them allowances, but let's use gelato. This guy loves
super dark chocolate gelato,
especially in Europe. So when we go to Europe, he will eat gelato. So that's your 10%.
But I guess, and let me explain. It's so dark that most people don't like it because it's not sweet at all. I like it because it doesn't have that much sugar. It's a tiny bit. So that's my allowance. But I have a hard rule: no fast food, no donuts.
Well, okay,
You can never do anything for a donut. Like you couldn't pay me enough to eat a donut or vegetable oils. Or like,
I thought you were gonna say vegetables.
Those things are disgusting. No, like, you see what I'm saying? You have to have your hard line. Now, there's a couple principles here, and each of you has to find out where you fall. For some people, success is 70%.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to bed on time or early 70% of the time, boom, I'm succeeding. For some, it's 80. For some, it's 90. For some of us, the crazy ones, like, no, I don't miss. And there's some research behind it. They said it's easier to set a habit and do it every single day than to try to do it 4 or 5 times a week. Because, like Katie, like you're alluding to, sometimes you fall off the train. And I have clients do this. They're like, okay, my morning routine is amazing Monday through Friday, but weekends, I throw it off. And guess what? Come Monday, you're like, oh, it's so hard to do my morning routine. I'm like, yeah, you're living in perpetual self-sabotage. Like you're good, tank yourself. Good, sabotage yourself. So find out where you land on this philosophy or strategy and how it works best for you.
This is where I want to add in my temperate side, because I think kind of like the chrono rhythm idea that they're like, for me, I couldn't do 100%, not because I couldn't do it, but because I feel constrained or restricted or limited by that. Sometimes bored. Sometimes I feel bored by that. I've tried where I've done morning routines that are exactly the same every single day, and I literally got bored by it. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't even wake up tomorrow because I have to do the same morning routine, right? So for some people, I think there's more of this flexibility. Again, that's where I'm like the 80-20, that providing that flexibility actually helps me stick to my standards the rest of the time better, if that makes sense, right? And when you're mentioning, oh, well, I'm not going to eat it unless I do this. Well, kind of my rule for that is it's not in my house. That's my main rule. I don't bring those things into my house, wherever my house is, right? Because that could be a hotel, that could be staying at my mother-in-law's house, that could be wherever I am in the world. That's my house, that's my space, and I don't bring that stuff in. But when I go out, I get to decide if I want to eat lemon sherbet. Now, usually, and I found over time, my desire to do that has lessened, but the option for me to do that helps me live those standards better when I'm at home. If that makes sense.
And again, we totally disagree on that.
But we've made it work.
I think when you allow exceptions, you weaken your resolve. Yep. I said it. I believe it.
I know. I said it.
Go ahead, Katie.
So we don't keep sugar in our house. Like that is a big rule for us, thanks to much of what you guys have taught us. And it was so interesting. We had family in town a few weeks ago, and I mean, people were bringing it into the house, like by the buckets, all the sugar. And I noticed a huge thing is my kids are able to eat whenever, whatever they want, because I know that what's in my house is good. And so then when my family brings in all this crap, there's so much more fighting, and like it stresses me out and it annoys me, which makes me mad at them. And I realized, wow, what an easy thing to just eliminate, instead of saying you can only have one Oreo and then like they eat 5 and then you're mad at
Yep.
and all this. So what an easy thing to just get rid of that.
Yes.
That helps you develop better relationships with them. And yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's so true. Same thing for us. I allow my kids, they can pretty much eat whatever they want in the house at any time, and I don't have to worry about it because everything available is something I'm fine with them eating.
And the kids are healthy.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Love it. Great point.
Okay.
So we'll wrap up right now.
Well, did we we did address the resentment from kids.
You just make it really relevant. Make sure they understand.
Well, yeah, and I actually did want to say something else about that, because if you are explaining to them, especially, and we think it's not going to work maybe, but if you're explaining with passion, and I'm not necessarily talking about anger, you're not frightening the kids, but if you're passionate and you're excited and you're like, guys, it matters. We've got to stop. This is important. and you're sharing your own passion that you're feeling, that has the power to convince them, like you're saying, so that then they don't feel resentful. And they at least understand where you're coming from and why it matters to you. And this will happen to me. And again, you have to be careful because it could be used manipulatively. But whenever my kids or our family, I feel like we're lapsing in something, maybe especially nutrition, like I'll get passionate and I'll go back to what caused me to change my behavior, talking about my dad and that my dad died from cancer in his colon. And that was directly related to his poor diet. And oftentimes I'll start crying, and I'm not doing it out of manipulation. I'm doing it out of sincere feeling. And they feel that. And then they're like, wow, yeah, I understand it. Now, then the other benefit, because again, with this whole idea of allowing our children to decide for themselves, when our kids go out into the world, like their grandma's house, they eat cookies, they eat junk.
But we set up deals with them, say, hey, we'll pay you.
Well, we do
We'll
that.
pay you, we'll bribe you, we'll do whatever to not eat that crap. You don't have to eat it.
But specifically, what I was going to say is that our older teens, especially, have gone out and they've spent an extended period of time with other friends or extended family members. And of course, they were just eating whatever was available. But they've all commented on how much they missed our food. They missed the healthy eating that we do at home. And they recognized that feeling. They recognized what it was like to not have it, that they felt differently. So, and you might think, oh, well, they need to be following that 100%. But what we're doing is we're trying to help them become aware of the different choices so that over time, they then will decide to choose those things for themselves. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. That was just the other thing I want to say.
We got to take one of our kids out on a date. We try to do a weekly date with one of our kids each week. And tonight is date night for our son. But before we end, I want you to pick just one thing you feel really convicted about today, and raise that standard. Feel the disgust or whatever it is that drives you. Say no more. This is non-negotiable. I'm drawing a line in the sand. From this moment forward, this changes. Katie?
Sorry if I'm taking.
No, this is great. We love it.
I just read in The Gift by Edith Eger. Man, I love this part where she is talking to one of her co-workers, and she's like, I can't get my doctorate in family therapy. Like, how old was she? 60? Yeah. She's like, I'll be 60 years old. And one of the best advice her friend gave her was, well, you'll be 60 either way. And you'll have the doctorate or you won't, but you'll be 60 either way.
Yeah.
And I feel like this applies so well with what you're talking about. Is like, we're going to be a year older next year, or we're going to keep growing as the gift of time is. And so what are you going to change to make it better?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you take the next 3 months or till the end of the year or the next 6 months or the next 12 months, it's going to pass, and it's going to pass quickly. I mean, look how quickly this year passed. So you can make a choice today. 12 months from now, are you still going to have the same family dynamics, the same family culture, the same habit? 12 months from now, are you still going to be like, we really need to do this? I sure wish we weren't doing that. All likelihood is you've been doing this for months or years already. Are you going to finally draw a line in the sand and say, no, it stops right now, or it starts right now, whatever it is? You have this choice, and you can just draw the line and say, no more. From this point forward, we're changing our family legacy. I'm changing my personal legacy. I will no longer tolerate that of myself. I mean, I just don't know how to drive that home with enough emphasis. Whatever you have in your life right now, take a look at everything you have in your life. It is a reflection of your current standards. Everything in your life is a reflection of what you've been tolerating.
Yes.
Everything. And when you stop and say, I won't tolerate that anymore, and you raise that up, whoa.
Well, I want to add this thing really quick before we go. Part of the reason we don't do this is because we feel that we're being ungrateful sometimes. Like, how can I be disgusted with my life? I need to be filled with gratitude for it. And that's true. And yet, if you don't start being disgusted with what you have, you can't get something different. So it's this dichotomy that we're dealing with of, and we've talked about it before, this divine discontent while still being grateful. Like, I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for where I've come. I'm grateful for everything I've accomplished so far. But it's not enough because I have more potential to reach. And in order to truly motivate that change, I have to develop some disgust and say, no, I'm done. I can't tolerate this life I have any longer. And it's really fascinating because we still have to do that, the two of us. We have an amazing life and we have to intentionally get disgusted with it in order to continue growing. I think about where we are right now. We are literally living in Georgia. Comfortable house, it's large, it's on a lake, it's beautiful. We've had to become disgusted with living here. And that sounds so silly. And I look at it sometimes, there's a pool right next door. We look out at the lake, and I think people would probably think we are crazy that we are going to give this up. For some people, we've had friends come visit and they're like, wow, this is such a great setup. This is such a nice place. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, it is. But we have become disgusted with it on purpose because we have bigger goals and dreams. And we know we can't reach them unless we disgust ourselves. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's how it works. And it's so fascinating. I'm still fascinated by it. That filled with gratitude, I can also be filled with disgust. And that's how I move.
Because anything that's below your potential, and you know if it's below your potential, anything that's below your potential is disgusting. You feel it. We all sense it. We all know it.
And we're using this word loosely.
Yeah.
It's not like we feel like vomiting when we.
We love it. We're deeply, deeply grateful. We're so grateful. But we're saying, there's
we also call it breaking up. You have to learn to break up with a place or a house or a situation. And so you start to find reasons why you no longer like it. Oh, I no longer like living in Georgia because it's so hot and humid or this or that. You're breaking up with the place so that you can mentally move on to the next thing, the next place, right? So it's this mental process you have to go through. And this is similar. You have to break up with the life you have now.
Well, and things that maybe are sentimental or traditional
like
in your
the
family.
Lemon ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. These traditions that come from your family, but I have such fond memories of eating donuts with my family. Like, you have to break up with that if you want to rise. That's just an example, right? Go through your stuff. Okay, we kept you guys too long. Thanks for being here. You're amazing. Get after it. Pick something, raise a standard, set it high, and go after it. And report back. Let us know how it goes. Send emails or messages or whatever. Watch how this starts to cascade in your life. If you level up any area of your life, you raise a standard, it starts to spill over because of the positive effect across our lives. So hit those standards. And if there's anything you're struggling to actually do and execute on, it's simply because you haven't set a standard yet. You haven't raised a standard. Okay. Love you guys. You're the best. That was awesome. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of the week. Adios.